Okay, well, I see a lot of people voicing their concerns before they're getting an X class, and they're talking about things like what's the range, what's the ride quality, and I answer that in a lot of my videos, but I'm going to voice a few concerns that I heard that are pretty new and they're pretty recent. Sorry, there's a family in the background, don't mind them, but, I'm in public, so you can't really interfere with that. So I'm going to voice some of the concerns that I recently got about the bike. So one concern is the durability on the bike. A lot of people have probably, before they purchased the bike, looked at the bad reviews, and I did too. Now, one of the reviews that I saw, and one of the people I was talking to, told me that it's going to take 100 days to get to you, and that was just not true. I think that person might have been mistaken. Didn't take 100 days. They were Spanish, so they might have had a translation error. So the bike is not going to take 100 days to get to you. Another thing is somebody was talking about is, the durability, and I'm going to add some clips of how durable it is, and it's really durable. Most e-bikes are really durable, and, they have a 1-year policy, so if you get a dud for some reason and it fails, which I think would be unlikely, then, obviously you got just unlucky and you should probably get another one. There's no reason to just say, oh, I'm not going to keep on going with the bike around if they sent me one bad one. It's very rare to get a bad one. Another thing someone asked me about is the suspension, because before I've complained about the suspension, and I'm going to voice again about the suspension and just about what I would do about it. So when it comes to the suspension, I changed my suspension out for this, and in another video I was voicing my concerns about how the suspension was so uncomfortable despite me changing it out. Now, I'm going to say something in general about the e-bike, which is going to be just a general opinion on it, and that is that the angle of the shock is just too hard to get a good compression. Now, I'm going to show you a video of the shock compressing in slow motion real quick. So after you watch that video, you probably notice something, and I'm going to probably add the clip again, and you'll notice that the shock doesn't compress much, and that's because the angle that it's at really isn't hard enough to compress even a soft shock super hard. Now, if you get an air shock that's super light, super light, I mean, it'll probably be fine. But if you don't get an air shock that's super light and you get a spring like me, this is the next thing that you're going to have to do. You're going to have to definitely get a lighter spring. No matter what your weight is, I think an appropriate spring is around 250 to 350 pounds, all the way up to 400. I think 500 is just a bit ridiculous. If you're that heavy to where you're compressing a 550 pound or 500 pound spring, maybe you shouldn't be riding an e-bike because you might wear out the motor fast. No offense to those people, but it's just a general concern about that weight. So another thing people are concerned about is, range, especially if you put on all this extra stuff. What's the range? Stuff like that. And I've said this before in a previous video, and you're going to get about 20 to 30 miles if you're pedaling. And if you really are on flat ground and you're taking it easy, you can get the max range 65, but I'm not going to touch on that because I've covered this in my other video. So another concern people had with the bike is waterproofing, and I'm going to add a clip of me riding through water and all that. And the bike is actually really waterproof. I just hosed this one down, actually right now, to clean it off to take into my house, because you want to keep batteries at a warm temperature, so I keep the batteries in my house. Not a warm or really hot temperature, just a comfortable temperature. Batteries are comfortable in which the temperature humans are comfortable at. Just think about that. So, the bike is generally really waterproof, and it's pretty good in the rain. I've ridden this bike now more than 10 times in the rain, and I can confirm that it is waterproof. Just an important thing to remember, and this is just a good habit to get in so you don't get sand inside your bike, is when you're going out in general, cover the battery hole with the little rubber stopper that's on it. Now, another precaution that you could add on there is just get a piece of tape each time and maybe just tape it over with electrical tape. I don't really think that's necessary, but you could do that. Now, one more thing I just want to add onto this is people said to me, somebody said, okay, what about the fender? Why is the fender backwards. And actually, I think the fender is more effective backwards, in my personal opinion, because it stops it at the perfect point. And for me, it's just a little preference. Honestly, I'm going to replace this fender and get an actual motorcycle fender on this bike, but it's not that big of a deal. You know, I just like the way it looks backwards. I think it would look kind of funny cut off and not aggressive. Now, I'm going to get an actual motorcycle fender, but those are some of the concerns that were brought about me. And one thing somebody asked is just in general, you know, what's the ride like? Like, what's this seat cover that you got on it? Is the seat cover comfortable? Now, the seat cover is comfortable, but really all electric bikes are kind of uncomfortable. I'm going to be honest, there's not really a true, like, soft comfort seat when you're pedaling something. I mean, you're basically pedaling a moped or a motorcycle. It's not comfortable, okay? It's not going to be something that's a luxury. And another thing is just that, you know, when you have the bike, you should generally just consider what you're going to immediately replace. And the things that I would suggest immediately replacing aren't the handlebars and stuff like that. The things that I just would immediately replace, if you could replace them or take it to a bike shop, is of course the bike chain and the rear suspension. And I don't think you really need to replace anything else. Maybe the tires, because they are pretty thin, that come on the bike. But in general, the bike is actually pretty good when it comes to you. Now, I think that this bike compared to a Super 73 is definitely more worth it than a Super 73, because here's the problems I have with the Super 73. And of course, I'm touching on this in the later part of the video, so I'll put a timestamp in the description of when I start talking about the Super 73, which is now. And the difference is that for this bike, this is a rear suspension, front suspension, over 30 mile per hour bike. To get the equivalent in a Super 73, you're going to be paying over $2,000. When for this specific model, you're going to be paying about, you know, about $1,700. Now, in comparison, think about that. This bike, flat out, with the same motor and the same everything that the Super 73, I think S2 has, is only about $1,700, when I think the Super 73 S2 is $2,300. I'll add an image of how much it costs. And I think, yeah, Super 73 definitely has the quality. They have the locality, but they're making their motors, they're making their drives. Everything is made in China, so I just don't see the reason why they need to be that expensive. And another thing, in addition, that this bike has kind of over the Super 73 is that this is more of a dirt bike. It's more aggressive. It's like the top tier model that they have, which is the nice one. And I think that's honestly something that people should look for. They have a 1,000 watt motor, which, yes, is pretty similar to the top model of the Super 73, which I think they say it's around 2,000 watts. In peaking, nominally, it's going 35. But the 1,000 watt version of the Aerial Rider X Class goes 35 miles an hour. I mean, it's faster than this. This goes about 30, and I adjusted the odometer. And I think if you definitely are in the COVID era and you want an electric bike and you want a fast one, don't go for the Super 73 if you don't have the money. Now, if you do have the money and you do want that locality, that American quotation marks made stuff, yeah, get the Super 73. Now, there are people at war that are going to say, well, blah, 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 this is more reliable. But in all honesty, Aerial Rider has not really had a problem with their bikes. They've been proven to be a reliable brand. I've ridden this thing in the rain, the sleet, the snow, and the mud, and this bike has came out of it unscathed. I've crashed this bike 4 times. I flipped this bike, I dropped this bike, everything, and it's super reliable. And they have a 1-year policy on all the parts on the bike, which is great, except for water damage. They won't cover water damage. Most companies will not anymore nowadays. So, you know, don't be pressure washing your bike. But when it comes to the bike in general, just think about that. You know, the bike is generally more affordable, and I think it's definitely more bang for your dollar. Now, yeah, I would get this over a Super 73. In fact, the top model that Aerial Rider makes, which is the same price as the top model, Super 73, is a dual motor 1,000 watt 2 battery, about a 75 mile range e-bike, the Grizzly. And I'm just astonished at how much the Super 73's top model is, because I still cannot comprehend why it costs that much. I just don't understand how it costs that much. Now, don't get offended. I'm not calling you dumb. I understand that there's a little bit of a quality difference, but still, these bikes, for the price and for what they are and how reliable they are just by far better, and I'd say probably more bang for the buck in just general, because there have been people, and I think it's the e-bike noob actually, who has put over 2,000 miles on it, and I'm going to tag him in the description because I'm going to be talking about him. And you know, I think you should watch his videos because he does a lot of riding videos, but he's had his bike for a long time. And this company, Aerial Rider, they're super attentive. You know, if they had a problem with their bikes, they'll contact you and say, hey, we noticed that our front shocks were really stiff. We want to send you a replacement. And I think that's really cool, and I think that's something that all companies should do. Now, I'm going to show some videos of the suspension in addition to that, if you're wondering how it flexes, how it works, and everything like that, just in case you wanted to see, you know, how it works. But in general, yeah, I would get this bike if you're in the market for an e-bike like this. Now, I would recommend, though, if you're getting this, please get a helmet and riding gloves with it. It is very fast. So stay safe, and if you like the video, please subscribe.